Hi guys, we're going to talk today about 7.6 elimination. So this is page 12 in your Unit 7 green packet, page 12. And what I'm going to show you guys today is another method in case graphing isn't easy to do and maybe substitution isn't so easy. So it's going to be problems that look like this. So what you're going to see here is they're going to be set up in this format, right, with x plus 6y equals 15, negative x minus 3y equals negative 6. So you notice it's kind of like there's three columns here, right? Like it's the first column with x's, then it's the column with y's, and then there's a column with just numbers. Okay, so those three columns are going to be important, and your numbers should always be set up in that way in order for this to work, okay? So then what you're going to do is you're going to notice if right away you notice that something on the first one, like this x, will cancel with something on the bottom, like that minus x, because x minus x is just 0, right? So that cancels. So if you can notice that something's going to cancel right away, you can just put a line at the bottom, and then we're just going to add these two equations up and down. So you're going to go back to those columns, and you're just going to add up and down. So what's x minus x? Well, that one gets eliminated, right? So that's gone. So there's nothing there because x plus negative x is just 0. So we don't have to write anything. That's why this is called elimination, because we're eliminating a variable, right? It's gone. Now what I have is 6y minus 3y. So 6 minus 3 is just 3y. And then 15 minus 6 is 9. As soon as I'm just adding or subtracting whatever it tells me to do, now I have a nice easy equation that I can just solve by dividing by 3, and I get that y equals 3. Now just like with substitution, you had to take that y equals 3 and plug it back in. You can pick either equation to plug it back into. So let's say I plug it back in here. I'm just going to do that so I can see it. And now what I'll have is that first equation. I'll have x plus 6. Now instead of y, I'm plugging back in the 3 because that 3 replaced my y value. And then 6 times 3 is 18. Subtract 18 from both sides, and I get that x equals negative 3. And then as always, I write my final answer as an ordered pair, negative 3, comma 3. And there's my final answer. Okay, so that's how you do it when you notice that those first two variables are going to cancel out right away. All right, what about this one? Let's look here. Let's look at our columns, right? So I've got the x's, a 3 minus 3x. That doesn't cancel. I've got my y's, a negative 5y and a positive 3y. Those don't cancel. So what I have to do in this situation is I have to multiply one of the equations by a number to make them cancel out. So you have to think about what number could you multiply by in order to make either the x or the y's cancel out. So for this case, if I take that whole second equation, that's a parenthesis, sorry, and I multiply it by 3, and that 3 is going to distribute here and here and here. What's going to happen? I'll get 3 times negative 1. That's negative 3, and it's going to cancel with this 3 right here, and we'll make those two cancel out. And that's what I want. I want it to be able to cancel and eliminate. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rewrite this second equation. So after that has distributed here, I'm going to get negative 3x. That's 3 times negative 1, right? 3 times 3 is 9y, and then 3 times 5 is 15. So that's now that new second equation. But the first equation was still the same, so I'm just going to copy that first equation here because that first equation didn't change at all. Now what's going to happen, I notice that my x's are going to cancel out, and that's what I wanted, right? I wanted to get it so the x's would cancel, or something cancels. Now I have 9y minus 5y, that's just 4y, and 15 minus 3 is 12, and then just finish solving your equation. Now again, we're not done. Once we get that y value, you have to plug it back in. And again, you can plug it into either equation. I'll go ahead and do it back into this first equation. So now when I write that first equation out, I'll have 3x minus 5 instead of y it's 3. And I keep going to solve, plus 15, right? And you guys can obviously go through and do this. If I'm going too fast anytime, remember you guys, stop the video, rewind it, and catch up. Give yourself time to catch up. My final answer, therefore, is 4, 3. X is 4 and Y is 3. Okay, let's keep going. I'll go into examples 3 and 4. So for example 3, I got to take a look at my columns here. So my X's, 2X and 8X, those don't cancel. My Y's, 2Y and Y, those don't cancel, right? And neither does 12 and 13, but it doesn't really matter about those. So I have to multiply by something that will make them cancel. So what I'm going to do, there's lots of choices here, and you might pick a different choice than what I pick, but it's really up to you to pick whatever you want, and whatever's easiest for you, you can pick that. So if I notice 2Y and Y are pretty close, the only thing is that this bottom one needs a 2, because then the Y's will cancel, but it needs to be a -2, right? Because only a +2 and a -2 will cancel. So I'm going to distribute. Don't forget, when you distribute, it has to distribute to everything. So I've got space here. I'll write it over here. So that's -16x minus 2y equals -2 times 13 is -26. Now my first equation stayed the same, right? So I just multiplied that bottom one, and now watch what happens. These two right here, ta-da, they are going to cancel because 2y and -2y is 0. So now I just add the others. 2 minus 16 is -14x. 12 minus 26 is -14. Divide by -14, and x equals 1. Now, just like the other problems, I'm not done. I got to take that x and plug it back in. I'll go ahead and plug it in this bottom one this time. It doesn't matter which equation you choose to plug it back into. So 8 times 1 plus y equals 13. So that's 8. And I move the 8 over by subtracting, and y equals 5. Final answer, x first, 1, 5. Okay, so that one was pretty easy. But again, if you did something else, let's say you're like, oh, I multiplied the top one instead by -4. That would also work, right? Or you decided to do some other combination. That's fine. Okay, whatever you want to do will work. All right, let's take a look at this last one. So I've got my 3 columns, 5x and -3y, or sorry, and -3x, 2y and y, and 1 and -16. Okay, so none of them look like they're going to cancel, so I can just decide what I want to multiply by. I'll show you a trick that'll work every time. If you're having trouble multiplying or figuring out what to multiply an equation by, this trick will work every time. So let me show you this trick, okay? So sometimes it's helpful to have a little trick. So what I'll do if I don't know what to use to multiply by is I'm literally going to take these first 2 numbers, the 5 and the -3, and I'm going to switch them. I'm going to do a -3 on top and a 5 on bottom, right? I'm just going to switch them, okay? And actually, I'm wrong about that. Hold on. Not negative. Just do 3 and 5. So you're just going to take the number 5 and 3. So just those numbers, and you're switching. So the 3 came up here, and the 5 went down here, okay? And now what's going to happen is those are automatically going to cancel out because one's positive and one's negative. So I'm going to distribute all the way across on here, and I'm going to distribute all the way across here. So let's look at that first equation. So the first equation, after I distribute, I'll get 15x plus 6y equals 3. And now the bottom equation, I'll get -15x plus 5y. And then 5 times -16, I might need my calculator for some of these, -80. And now do you see what happened? It's like magic. those 15x's are going to cancel, okay? And that'll happen every time. So if you want, you can always just do this little switch here with those and those. Switch them across. That'll work every time. Just make sure one is positive and one is negative. Okay, so now when I go through and finish this problem, these cancel. 6 plus 5 is 11y. 3 minus 80 is negative 77. Divide by 11. Y equals negative 7. Now we're not done. We got to take it and plug it back in like always. I'll go ahead and plug it into the first one. So that gives me 5x plus 2 times negative 7 equals 1. And when I work it out, I'll add 14. And that equals 15. Divide by 5. X equals 3. So final answer, ordered pair, 3, negative 7. And there it is. Okay, so that method will work every time. You could have done it on the last example 3 if you wanted to. Or if you can figure out something easier to just multiply one equation, then you can do that. Otherwise, you can always do that switch and multiply the front ones together. Okay? You're going to work on your own now on pages 13 and 14, and then check your answers and submit that to me on Schoology.